cats, I can recommend AWAN, A-W-A-N. Please contribute.
In Kingston.
In Kingston. They're a wonderful society. All the cat people or organizations on this side of the river were not helpful. They wouldn't answer phones, or the dog wardens would say, try this person, try this person. I tried probably for 2 weeks before I found AWAN.
God bless you.
So, persistence. Just
there's a place in heaven for you.
Thank you. There's a place in heaven for everybody.
That's not nice, is it, folks? To break a person's lens and just run away. I think it's going to cost about $125. See that sky? It's 48 degrees on the first week of February. Isn't that wonderful? We've had a beautiful winter. We've had only 7 storms, and 2 of them were very slow.
So far, I don't know, 130 miles per hour.
Wow! On the lake or on a...
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, wow. Really?
Yeah, it doesn't.
For how long? 10 minutes?
No, it only took about, only takes about 30 seconds to get up that fast.
Take your time. Nice job under the hood. 1993 Lincoln.
Do some work.
So guess what that nice person in the parking lot cost us? $138. And it took 2 hours out of our lives. Well, I would say 3. Bribes. As a police... A computer at the library. Now it's time to go get the odious renewals and post them so that they get to odious Cablevision by Monday, February the 11th. Can you read this, folks? Town line, East Fishkill, formed from Fishkill, 1849. Beekman formed as town, 1788. Part of LaGrange, something, in 1821. And part of Unionvale in 1827. Let's try it again. Town line, East Fishkill, formed from Fishkill in 1849. Beekman formed his town in 1788. Part of LaGrange, something, in 1821. And part of Unionvale in 1827. Do you understand that? I don't think I understand that. Did you ever see 50 degrees before on February the 8th? Delectable. We asked for this mail to be forwarded, and it took them 2 weeks to get the mail to us. I don't think that's right. Did you see the new VCRs? They're Sanyos, and they're very, very nice. There's 1 Magnavox, 2 Sanyos, and 4 Emersons. And now it's possible to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's possible to do 9 dubs at the same time, is that right? No, 7. Well, here it is, folks, the finished job. The Public Access Pro Se Museum. I would say 20 hours, 25 hours, just to get this far. I think it's all over, except for the painting. Another 50 degrees in February. Oh, this has been a glorious winter. To the west, to the east. I believe that clock said 11:11. That's a magic minute. We thank you, God, for this beautiful earth, for those glorious stars above at night. We thank you, God, for such an interesting world. People are interesting, animals are interesting. What happens is interesting. We thank you, God, for your glorious creation. We thank you, God, for magic minutes. We thank you, God, for the colors and for the electromagnetic spectrum. And we thank you for wonders, wonders every minute, wonders created by God every minute. Wonders created by God. Guess what, folks? My Canon camcorder. 2 years. My buddy Cam. He lost his hearing. That's right, he's deaf. He can't hear anymore. The microphone port right here. If you press it a certain way, you can get voice. It will play back. It has playback audio, but it doesn't have any input audio. And if you press this a certain way, you'll get sound. But you can't rely on that because you don't know whether it's recording or not. So who's doing the recording now? A Sony. I prefer Canon. You can't beat Canon, but Circuit City doesn't carry Canon at the moment, and Walmart doesn't carry Canon, so I had to get a Sony. And this Sony, unlike this Canon, doesn't have a remote. See, the thing about the Canon was that you had a remote. You could start and stop it from here, and you could zoom from here. Isn't that great? Little thing. And you can start recording from here and stop recording from here. But you can't do this on this Sony. However, this Sony's very, very nice. Why doesn't it have any? And it doesn't have, it won't put up 2 lines the way the Canon did. 914, 949, 9495, and Glendora. So it just put up 1 line. So I'll get up and turn the camera off. And because it doesn't have, and the audio isn't as good, you see, the best audio you get was with a close-up mic. Close-up mic like this. And this one's in stereo, too. And so another thing we lost is the music. We don't have any music, any church hymns. Here, let me show you the stereo mic. So, I don't know. What should I do? Go up, pay another $100? This one costs $300. No, it didn't. It cost less than $300 at Walmart. What do I do? Go and, it's such a cute expression. And the color isn't good either. This is red, not orange. Tan. Maybe I can adjust the color. So should we get the next model up? Next model up has a remote, and it has a external mic jack.
Yes.
That was Franklin. Thank you. And it doesn't review the counter on the screen in minutes and seconds or in anything. This must be a poor man's camcorder. Well, let me tell you some jokes. The boss said to Albert, "You've been just like a son to me. Surly, insolent, and uncooperative." And a reporter asked the teacher, "What are the 3 things you like best about being a teacher?" And the teacher said, "I like motivating young minds, teaching the youth of America how great it is to be an American, and shaping the future generation." And the reporter said to the teacher next to her, "And what are the 3 things you like best about being a teacher?" And she said, "June, July, and August." And a kid wrote on his essay in in school, that life in colonial times was really tough. The kids had to play their video games by candlelight. And the teacher asked, "What cultural contribution did the Phoenicians make?" And a kid said, "Phoenician blinds." And Mrs. Morgan asked, "What is an indentured servant?" And Bobby said, "An indentured servant is a servant with false teeth." And if we breathe oxygen at night, if we breathe oxygen in the daytime, what do we breathe at night? Nitrogen. Okay. And a kindergarten teacher is somebody who makes little things count. And a little learning is a dangerous thing, but it does beat total ignorance. And Mrs. Cahoon says that her daughter Sydney prefers young teachers. She likes to see them age. She likes to watch them grow old. And Mrs. Morgan, the teacher, was trying to impress upon the youth the duties and responsibilities of the Vice President of the United States. And she said, "Why, if the President of the United States should suddenly die, who would get the job?" And the little girl said, "A Republican undertaker." This is itty bitty buddy Kevin. Hi Kevin, how you doing? Cute little face. And little baby Stephen. And Napoleon Bonaparte. The Reverend Taylor Holbrook gave this to me. Said, "I die before my time, and my body shall be given back to the earth and devoured by worms. What an abysmal gulf between my deep miseries and the eternal kingdom of Christ. I marvel that, whereas the ambitious dreams of myself and of Alexander and of Caesar," he puts himself in his own class, right? "Should have vanished into thin air, a Judean peasant, Jesus, should be able to stretch the hands across the centuries and control the destinies of men and nations." That's a pretty good thing that Napoleon said. But he's all wrong about controlling destinies. A destiny cannot be controlled. A destiny is set. That's kind of interesting, though.
some papers, and it seems that you think I'm not getting your papers. You think that I'm not getting them. Is that right? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, what makes you think that? I said, well, Your Honor, we've filed papers here, and if I file my papers on Thursday, by Friday afternoon I have an order back that the motion's been dismissed. And I've been fighting in the court for 5 years, and I know it usually takes 3 or 4 months for a federal judge to look at a motion. And this happened to us 5 times in the last 3 weeks. So the last motion that we filed, we hired a process server, and we had him come into your chambers to serve it to you, but your clerks wouldn't let him in. And they said, no, the judge refuses to accept this. So the judge says, he started looking at his clerk, who got absolutely 10 shades of gray and then white, sitting over in the corner. And he said, well, where's the file? And the clerk said, oh, Your Honor, we didn't have the file up here for the hearing. So he stopped everything, and he sent the bailiff downstairs to get the file. And the bailiff came back up with the file, and he said, well, what is it that you think I didn't get, Mrs. Daddick? So I pulled out my first motion. I said, well, we have this motion, Your Honor, that we really felt you were going to rule in our favor on. And he started flipping through the book. And then he started really flipping through the book. And about 10 minutes into looking through the book, he still couldn't find that motion. And there were 5 other motions that he couldn't find. But I had my stamped copies with me. Are the law clerks still there that did that? I don't know. I can't get to the judge's chambers anymore. Okay, but the judge said at the end of the hearing, Mrs. Daddick, when this is all over, you're going to go downstairs with Mr. Daddick, and you're going to stay in that clerk's office until this file gets straightened out. Sounded like I did something wrong, but that was okay. We got it straightened out. But that's the kind of thing you'll run into. You have to watch those files. Michael wasn't kidding when he said, you've got to call that courthouse or physically go down there. If that's possible, that's even better, and check that file. Because when you're a pro se litigant and you know what you're doing and you're fighting with the law, they don't want you to win. Because if you win and other people find out about it, they're going to say, hey, I can do that. I don't need to pay that attorney either. Okay? And the sad part is, if the attorneys didn't charge us all so much money, we wouldn't mind paying them, but we really wouldn't mind paying them if they went in and did exactly what we've got to learn to do, because they won't do it. You don't have much of a choice if you can't find somebody to fight for you. Focus, we talked about, very, very important. I can't stress anything that I feel is more important than continuing to learn about this. When you're in a case, your whole life has to focus on it. There just isn't anything more important. You can't say, well, I'd rather go out to dinner with my friends, or I'd rather go to the movies. If you've got an important case, your mind has to be focused on that case most of the time. And that's how you'll win it. And if you get in early enough, it could be over in a matter of weeks or months. It doesn't have to take years and years, but you've got to make it a priority in your life, because if it isn't, you cannot win it. But believe me, it's worth the price. That's about all I really have. Anybody has any questions? If not, Peter? I mean, I could go for another 2 days if you want.
We have 20 minutes. If you have a question,
I'd be glad to.
Questions right here, please. Quickly, let's move it along here. This is a republic, not a democracy. Let's get going.
Is this for Michael?
No, this is for you, Peggy.
Okay.
It's a very simple question. I'd just like to know what your background is, if you have paralegal experience or...
Oh, okay, that's a good question. This will show you can all do it. Before we got involved in this, what I did for a living was I painted houses with my husband. You don't need to be a genius to do this. You just need to be able to read and apply yourself and listen to people and listen to the right directions. I mean, had Michael and I not met Michael Brown, could we have survived this? I don't think so. Because there are a lot of people out there that are really willing to give you bad information. And to reinvent the wheel yourself is a hard thing to do. I mean, even if you look at young attorneys who come out of law school, they're going in, they're working for a firm, there's somebody that has the experience, the background to plan strategy. That's what Michael was talking about earlier. You can't all of a sudden know that. Out 15 lawyers on the other side. You know, they hate us. They can't stand us. They wish we would have went away years ago. And I mean, we just had a hearing, I guess it was about 6 weeks ago. All right, I'll take another 10 minutes of your time. Okay. When this started out, for us, it was this fraudulent mechanics lien. We were building our dream house in South Florida, and at the end of the building project, the roof failed inspection. This is what got us thrown into the courts. And the builder, rather than going to the roofer and saying, make the roof right, went to the county and kept having them come back and inspect and inspect and inspect. And they kept failing the roof, and they failed it 5 times. And then on the 6th time, they got some inspector that obviously they paid off, who came out and went up into the attic to inspect the roof. And this is a cement tile roof with nails that hold it on. And you have to see the nails coming through the sheeting. I know all this about roofs that I never cared about before in my life, right? So he went up to look at it. This was the 6th inspector, and he went up and came back down, and he said, roof's fine. So my husband and I were standing down there. My husband Michael had gone up with the inspector, but I didn't go up in the roof. So they came down, and he said, oh, the roof's fine. It passes. So I said to him, well, wait a minute. I said, I don't know anything about roofs, but there were 5 inspectors out here that came out, failed this roof. Nobody did anything. You went up there, you come, you say, okay, it's fine. Can you explain how that happened? He said, dead serious, typical government agency. Oh, the other 5 inspectors had weak batteries in their flashlights. Now, I'm from New York, and I don't buy that kind of garbage. So I said, I'll tell you what. You give me a statement in writing that that roof meets code, and that's fine. We'll accept that. Well, 6 weeks later, we're still fighting for this letter in writing. Now the building official that's in charge of the building department comes out and says, it's no good. It fails. So now we're back and we say, okay, fine. What happens next? Well, the builder went to the bank and he said to the bank, the house is finished. We got a roof that has to come off. This is what the county's saying. The roof has to come off the house and be replaced on a new house. He goes to the bank, he says, the house is done. And we had signature authority to release the funds for the last 10%, but nobody realized that. They gave them the money. So now we got the bank did something wrong. The county issues him a conditional certificate of occupancy that they can only issue to the owner of the house. They make their mistake, right? Now we go through this little administrative board called the Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals, our personal little kangaroo court in West Palm Beach. And there's a bunch of guys sitting up there. There's supposed to be a plumber, electrician, a general contractor, but the guy that's the head of the board, he's sick that day. And we're talking about our roof and whether or not it has to come off, because the builder's appealing it. He doesn't think he should have to fix it. So who's the head of the board that day? A roofing contractor. Well, we go through this charade of a hearing, and we're calling this family attorney who's saying to us, oh, don't worry about it. You don't need an attorney for that. This is just, you know, a little procedure they do down the county. You just go, make sure you're there. You'll be fine. Oh, yeah, we were fine. They didn't let us say anything. We brought a roofing expert with us. They didn't let him say anything. And at the end of this hearing, the roofer stands up and says, well, we think, this is our decision, we think that the roof doesn't meet code, but he doesn't have to fix it. Oh, great. You know, what does this mean? So we get out and we say to this building the administrator for the whole building department, well, what do we do next? And he says, that's the end. There's nothing you can do. Okay, so now we said, oh, wow, now we got a $30,000 roof we got to replace. And in the meantime, we get home that night, and there's a knock on the door, and the builder files a fraudulent mechanics lien against us, saying not only this whole problem with the roof, but we owe him $8,000 that we don't owe him. All right, now we got a bad roof and a lawsuit. So we go and we get an attorney, big law firm. And we get the attorney, and he says, oh, no problem, I'll sue the bank, I'll do this, I'll do that, we'll take care of the whole thing, we'll get you all your money back. We give him all the papers, we say, it's off our shoulders. And nothing happens for like a year. And we go away, we had a job, a painting job up in New York, we went back up to New York for the holidays, and we came back on New Year's Eve to a pile of paper because the attorney who we called and said, listen, we're going to New Jersey for Christmas, as soon as we left Florida, went to court and said, I want to withdraw from this case. Didn't notify us, because we weren't there. Went in, the judge let him out. We get back from Florida, and we're like 2 weeks away from a trial. No attorney. Now we start our rounds in the court, and we're getting this, I can't give you legal advice. And we're saying, but we just need to talk to the judge. We just need to tell him we have more time. I can't give you legal advice. You have to write him, you have to file a motion. Did I know what that meant? I didn't have a clue. I'm writing letters and letters and letters, and nobody's reading them because that's called ex parte. You cannot write a letter to a judge. Don't ever think you can. Don't think you can convince a judge that you're right by writing him a letter. You have to go in and file a paper in that court, and anything you file in that court, you've got to make sure the other side has. That's how our disaster started. Well, we got another attorney. That was the one from our church. And he came in and he said, well, I'll take care of this for you, no problem. I'll sue the county, I'll sue this one, I'll sue that one. Okay. We get into the first set of depositions. He calls us for depositions, and he calls this little weasel of a builder. This is not a big builder that we're fighting, folks. This is one little guy with two brothers. And they had this little construction company, and the day they took our deposit, money, two of the brothers who did all the work on the houses. The one brother sat in the office, and the other two went out and did the actual work. Well, the two that did the work took our deposit money, went out to the middle of Florida that night, out to Okeechobee, this little old town out in the middle of Florida, and got arrested by the FBI for buying cocaine from the FBI. That was our deposit money, okay? And then the rest of our money went trying to get these jokers out of jail. But we didn't have a clue this was going on. Okay, we were a year into all of this lawsuit before we found out that those two guys had been in jail. This can hit you out of nowhere. So the best thing you can possibly do is learn about the system before you actually get in there. Then you go in. We were trying to get to the judge just to say, we need 10 or 20 days to find another lawyer. Finally, after we'd gone back to the judge's judicial assistant for the third time, we said to her, I said, I don't know, how do I find out how to write a motion? She said, wait a minute, because she was really annoyed. We were there 3 days in a row. That's pushing it. She pulled some papers out of her garbage pail that some attorney had filed earlier that morning, and she said, here's the motion. This is what you have to do. The judge is in his chambers every morning at 8:45. Now, this is something you need to find out about if you're fighting in a court suit. Some courts, they have open hearing time. It's kind of like a good way for lawyers to make quick money, because what they do is you can go in there, it's who comes first gets called first. You have 5 minutes for each side on the hearing. Most courts have this. Maybe once a month, maybe once a week. Our courts in West Palm, because they like the lawyers to make a lot of money, we have it 4 days a week. So you file a motion, you send it to the other side, and you send them a notice that says, we're going to have this hearing on Tuesday, March 25th. And everybody shows up at 8:45. Who comes first signs in. If you don't get called by, say, 9 o'clock when the judge has a trial starting, you got to come back another day. That's when the lawyer sends you a bill and says, the judge just couldn't get to us. That's because he didn't get there until 9 o'clock, and everybody had already been heard. But we went in and went to this first judge, all dressed up, got into the courthouse, into the courtroom, and it was Judge Wessel sitting behind the bench then. And he said, next. And I was watching real careful. I saw those attorneys get up, go up to the microphone on the podium and say, good morning, Your Honor, we're here about this. So I got up, I said, good morning, Your Honor. My name is Peggy Daddick, and we're here this morning because we need more time to get another attorney. And he said, where are the attorneys on the other side? And I said, I don't know. And he said, bailiff, get her out of the courtroom. And I said, but, and the bailiff helped me get out of the courtroom. So now Michael and I are out in the hallway. We had no idea what to do, but we knew we couldn't go in there. I mean, this is a tough thing, folks. You have to understand. Freedom of speech doesn't count in the courtroom. You got to go in there and play by their rules. You cannot go in when the other side doesn't know you're going. If you set a hearing and they don't show up, that's a whole different story, as long as you've got proof that they were notified. Anything you do, if there's an attorney on the other side, anything you mail out certified mail, so you get a receipt for it. Because the attorney's favorite line when there's a pro se litigant on the other side is, Your Honor, I never got that. We had a lawyer say that one morning when Judge Alvarez, Michael and I went in, this is a legal malpractice case that we have filed against two of the attorneys that represented that crooked builder. We went in for a hearing, and we're sitting there, and I get up, and I'm saying my part of the motion, and the attorney on the other side stands up and says, Your Honor, I never got a notice of this hearing. And Judge Alvarez looked at him and said, well, how'd you get here? Well, let me tell you, not too many judges are that good, but they do it. I mean, they lie and they lie. If you're right, they're gonna lie. That's guaranteed, because they're used to it. They get away with it. They lie when there's other attorneys there. It's all about who can lie better. But when you go in, you don't dare lie, because that's the only thing that's going to carry you through, is the truth and what you're fighting with and knowing the law. You don't go in and make anything up, because they're a whole lot better than any of us at lying. That's their profession. I'm convinced of it. I have not met an honest lawyer yet. As soon as I start thinking one of them is honest, he shows me how wrong I am. I got to tell you. I mean, they go in and they will flat out lie to a judge about anything. We've had them go, and we have it in transcripts, and it's tough to get it worked out. Michael said, sue them for fraud on the court. It's hard. It can be done, but it is hard. So you've got to go in there and try to get your points out as quickly as possible in as narrow a way as possible. That's another mistake we made. In the beginning, we couldn't figure out what our story was. I mean, how do you tell somebody that it's the builder did this, the roofer did this, then the judge wouldn't let me in the courtroom, and it becomes so, you have to focus, you have to narrow, you have to figure out what your important issues are. Those are the ones that you want to fight. You don't want to fight everything in the world. You don't go into a hearing and try to make 25 points. You go in and you try to make 1 or 2. That's where a lot of pro se litigants will really have a problem. I had a guy last week. All he had to do was to go into court. This is a situation, it's a foreclosure. And we had been able to move the case out of state court to federal court. And in the federal court, the judge took a look at it and decided that he was going to send it back to state court. So in the interim period, we filed a motion for reconsideration, which means we found other points that we felt the judge had missed, and we wanted him to relook at the situation. You can do that within 10 days. And we put that motion in. Now, in the meantime, the builder that was foreclosing on this guy's house had one attorney up in Jacksonville who was fighting this out about whether or not the case should stay in federal court. But the builder had another attorney way down South Florida who goes into the state court where the foreclosure was first filed and starts asking for a default judgment. That means nobody answered this lawsuit, so we win. But it had been answered. It had been answered up in the federal court when it was moved over there. So I said to this guy, all you have to do is go into the hearing and explain one thing to the judge. This is it. You go up there and you say, Your Honor, one lawsuit can't be in 2 different courts. This man has a lawyer fighting one thing up in Tallahassee, and now he's coming down here and asking you to look at the same lawsuit. But this guy went down there and thought, this is the time to tell the judge his whole story. What happened? The judge said, because he never said what I told him to say. He never focused on what the issue was. The issue was this court had no jurisdiction. It didn't. Question of jurisdiction. Does that court have the right to hear it when the federal court has it? No. But he didn't say that. He went in and said, this man can't foreclose on my house because I made these payments and this. That's not the time to say that. So the judge said, you've got 10 days to answer it. Now we have a big problem because you hear anyone who's gone to the Patriot meetings, you probably have heard a lot about jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is a real valid issue. If a court does not have jurisdiction over you, someone serves you with a lawsuit, okay, and they just send it in the mail, you never get service of process. If you go into that courtroom and you start talking, even though you never got served, and you start talking about the lawsuit and what the lawsuit is about, you just volunteered into the jurisdiction of that court. Doesn't matter if they didn't serve you, nothing matters. So it's something that you want to watch very carefully. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you just wanted to stand. But
this is for Michael. Okay. Now,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, so going back to the issue of jurisdiction.
Oh, right here. Here's the lady right here with the question.
Here's a gentleman with a question, too.
Oh, okay.
He's just a little patient. Peggy, this is a question that has to do with jurisdiction as well. I live in North Carolina. There happens to be a West Palm Beach attorney who lies to a 67-year-old widow who lost her daughter in a tragic automobile accident from a year and a half ago. And he's collected over $250,000 in fees, and he lies to this woman. I happen to know this woman very well. She's my mother.
State it real quick. We're out of time. State it quick.
The question is, I want to file suit against this attorney for engorgement of fees or deception or just flat out violating his canons of rules of ethics. How do I go about it in federal court?
Is he your mother's attorney?
Yes, and was also mine.
Okay.
I'm planning to get that.
Yeah, you can certainly file it under. How much money is involved? $200 and some thousand?
He's collected over $250,000.
Oh yeah, you've got diversity jurisdiction that Michael talked about there. It is, yeah, it is. Son of Owen Rommel has a lot of good answers on that, and you can definitely do it. Talk to me later. Tell me who the attorney is. I probably know him.
David Feingold, Republic Building.
Yeah, I probably sued him. That's true.
If Peter give you time, I thought you should expand more on explaining to people when you're helping them or they're getting help from this education, that they should focus on that instead of going to a friend or a patriot or something, because they can't serve two gods at one time.
This is a very important point. I touched on that a bit earlier, but it is a problem that I run into with pro se litigants. I've got to tell you people, when Michael and I are fighting in the courts, if we get a motion in the mail today, and I don't have anything else on my plate that in any of the lawsuits, that's what gets my first attention. Because when you get something in the mail, a lot of times you only have 3, 5, 10 days to respond to it. You don't know how long it's going to take you to go and do the research that you need to put a response together back to that. So you don't wait until the night before to go and do your research. You go down immediately and start getting your answers. And you get as much as you can. And when you do research, okay, let's take an example. Michael was talking yesterday about you put in a lawsuit against somebody and you get a motion back to set aside the whole complaint, or I'm sorry, not to set aside. You get a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim. Well, the first thing you have to do is go to the law library and find out not only why you're right, but you have to find out why the other side is wrong. Okay, you've got to look at the whole picture. You can't go, people will tell you that teach other seminars, go out there, find a case that's similar to yours, and then you just go show that to the judge. It's just not that simple, okay? You have to go out and find a case that says why that case that you have with those type of issues cannot be dismissed, so that you can go into that judge when you go in to fight that motion and say, Your Honor, this case says A, B, C, and D, and here's the case law, and I have a copy for you, and I have a copy for the attorney on the other side, and you've got to know that case law, and it's just not that hard. Those cases are out there. And I'm going to tell you something. When you go in that prepared and you win and that attorney loses, there just isn't a better feeling in the world.
And I will tell you from personal experience, no, there isn't. We are the Erwin Rommel School of Law, and our Babylonian ghetto address is care of 4842 North Magnolia, Chicago, Illinois, 60640-4710. Our phone is 773-878-0681, dedicated fax 0682. We are going to lunch. You get 60 minutes, and it's battle stations in 60 minutes. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get, I've got a few loose ends here I need to tie up, and I will be out of your face before the end of this set. If any of you want to ask questions of me, you're going to have to come up here, and you're going to have to do it fairly soon, because I should be through with this fairly easily. Peggy, when I get through, are you up to another set? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I'm going to put Peggy on. When she gets through, Dwayne Rogers comes on, so when I'm through with these few last notes I've got for you, I'm through for the day, or actually for the weekend, and then, you know, my other officers will take over and finish you up. First thing I want to point out, you may have noticed that Peggy isn't bashful, and I've got to tell you, let me tell you how good she is, because she will never tell you this herself. She's so good in an open courtroom that when she walks into a courtroom, normally about 24 lawyers will file in behind her just to watch her in action. You can do the same. Another thing, some other minor things I want to cover. Whenever you sign a legal document, you sign it in blue ink, because if you sign it in black ink, you will not be able to sort out the Xerox copies. And any copy that is signed in blue ink becomes an original. Next thing I want to point out is Ambassador Fox reminded me during one of the breaks, is that Blackstone's commentaries were the law book that everybody had prior to our Revolutionary War. In other words, it's a real good summary of the English common law, and it's definitely something you should have right after the Rules of Civil Procedure and Black's Law Dictionary. One of the things I did not cover was discovery. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. There are other law book publishers besides West Publishing Company. West Publishing is kind of geared towards prosecutors and big business and big government. There are other companies like the Mitchie Company out of Virginia, M-I-C-H-I-E, Clark Boardman out of New York. There are a number of other law book publishers, and I got to tell you, some of these law books are literally worth their weight in gold. I bought one set of books by McCarthy, some outfit out of California. I believe that, I'm trying to think of the company, that might be Matthew Bender that carries it. It's called Bad Faith Insurance, what to do when your insurance carrier stiffs you. And a friend of mine paid $180 for these books, and he read the books, and I coached him through a bad faith case, and he collected $10,000. And then the skinflint was going to send the books back because he didn't need them anymore, so he could get a refund. I said, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that. I said, I need these books. I use those books, and thanks to that one set of books, I've had 5 bad faith insurance companies or bad faith insurance cases that I've walked people through, and I have lost 0 of them. It's the one type of action when an insurance company stiffs you. The courts have no sympathy for insurance companies. They're really kind of neat outfits to sue because the odds are in your favor. Another thing I want to point out here before I get back to discovery is that, and I've said this repeatedly, is that the law is a weapon. Now imagine yourself in 1797, you're on the frontier, and you've got a problem with an Indian war. Well, you have one of 2 choices. You learn to use the weapons yourself, or you hire mercenaries because nobody is going to come over free gratis and kill your Indians for you. Next thing is, this is also from Sun Tzu, is what is important in warfare is to attack the enemy's strategy. And we've already given you examples of that. If the enemy's strategy is to send motions that you don't know about or to bribe the clerk,